Now that we have our wrapper component above the preview component, we can add global dependencies which the preview component can access. So let's begin by adding Viewtify, which you can do by copying the Viewtify imports from the main.js file that you can see on screen. So we want to grab these three here, and we'll go copy. And now we'll come over to the wrapper file and we'll paste these at the top of the file there like that. We also want to import view. So I'm just going to type that in. We'll go import view from view like that. Now with that done, what we can do is install the Viewtify plugin on the global view object by going view use Viewtify. The other thing we need to do is modify the render function of the wrapper component, since Viewtify components need to be wrapped in a v-app component for the Viewtify CSS to cascade down. So let's come and change this render function here, and instead of returning the component from there, what we're going to do is make v-app the first argument to that, and then we'll make an array, and inside that we'll call h again and pass in the component there. Coming over to the docs, let's now take a look at the page footer component, and you can see that this time it's successfully rendered. However, you might notice that there's a whole lot of white space underneath it here. And this is because the v-app wrapper that we've added has a minimum height CSS rule. In fact, there are a few cases where the default Viewtify CSS is not appropriate for use with isolated components like this. So let's go to our terminal now and create a CSS file where we can override any undesirable rules. So we'll go touch docs style guide and we'll call it style.css. Opening this file now, let's fix the height issue by overriding the application wrap class. And we're going to set min height to auto, and we'll add the important modifier as well. To add this CSS file to the docs, we're going to need to add a require property to the config file, and we'll assign to that an array. And in that array, we can simply put the path of the CSS file, and it will be included in the Webpack bundle. So let's add docs style guide style CSS like that. Let's now open the terminal again and restart our server for the changes to take effect. Once the server restarts, you'll see the white space has now disappeared from below the page footer component preview. However, and maybe you can't tell this from a glance, but the fonts used for the page footer are actually incorrect. This is because the fonts that we told Viewtify to use are in fact Google fonts loaded via CDN here in the index.html file used by our app. So let's copy this URL so that we can use it in the style guide. In order to load the fonts from the CDN in the style guide, we can add a template property to the config file and assign that an object. Inside that, we'll put a head property and again assign an object to that. We'll then add a link section in that object and assign to it an array. And it's here that we can declare any link tags for the head of the style guide. So to add a link, we're going to add a property and add an object, and the first property we'll give it will be rel, and we'll assign to that style sheet. Also add a type property, and we'll assign to that text CSS. And finally, we can add the href property, and that will be the Google Fonts CDN link. With that done, if you now restart the server and reload the site, you'll see that the fonts used in the page footer are now the correct ones. And certainly that'll be more noticeable in some of the other component previews that we're going to add in coming videos.